Good morning. How are y'all? Ooh, I'm going to fix this. I took this off so I can blow my nose. I am okay. My entire family is sick. My daughter got sick last week and is still sick. And my wife is super sick. When I mean like super sick, like she's like running a fever, not running a fever, running a fever, not running a fever, running a fever, not running a fever. It's been like that for like 3 days now. 4 days now. So I have done the best I can in a one-bedroom apartment to like limit my ability to be sick. But when you literally are like on top of one another, that's impossible. So I've got a little bit of congestion, so you got to bear with me today, just a little bit. So anyways, I am super excited. Frank told me about 2 weeks ago that he had to do a funeral yesterday, so he would be out. Therefore, he needed somebody to teach for him on Sunday because he wouldn't have enough time to be properly prepared. So I said, sure, I can take the first one in the new year. I love the new year, right? I love the new year. So I am a reader. I like to read articles. I like to read articles all the time. I'm consistently reading. And one thing that I like to read is I like to read just because I like to see how silly people are about the things that they write a lot. So, as I was reading a whole bunch of New Year's articles in preparation for this, I just thought I'd share with you some popular headlines about the new year, right? Ready for this? Get ready, right? New year, new life, right? It's new year, time to get your new life started. Ready for this? New year, new you. Right? Or, my favorite, get better in the new year. Well, see, all of these have a rather, what's the word I'm looking for? Me focus, right? They didn't really think I liked it. In fact, when I think of the new year, most of the time the new year comes with it a little bit of excitement and a lot more anxiety, right? A little bit of excitement and then a lot more of anxiety. And the reason it normally, for me, comes with a lot more of anxiety is I don't know what's going to happen in the new year, right? Like, honestly, I had no idea what's going to happen. Like, if you would have told me all of the stuff that happened this year, last New Year's, I wouldn't have believed you, right? Like, legitimately, okay, we were on the verge a month ago of one of the biggest governments in the world, France, collapsing. Do you understand that? Like a month ago, the government of France literally could have collapsed and nobody would have been surprised. Well, I think in 2017, if you would have said, hey, by the end of the year, the government of France could collapse, people would have looked at you like you're crazy. Right? Yet, they had 100,000 people rioting in the street. Okay? Think about that. Any time that America gets 100,000 people rioting in the street, we're in trouble because Americans are crazy. Right? I'm just saying. Right? If you can get 100,000 people right in the street, the French are rather tame people in comparison. Right? But the new year with it brings a little bit of excitement, a little bit of anxiety. And so as I began to study about the new year, I had one question. How are believers supposed to handle a change in times or a change in seasons or years in our lives, right? Because whenever there's a change, there comes with it inherent excitement, but also the inherent unknown. I don't know what is next. And so as I began to study this, it brought me to Hebrews chapter 13. I'm going to bring this up here with me. That way I can see it better, right? So, Hebrews chapter 13, verses 5 through 9. Make sure that your character is free from the love of money, being content with what you have. For he himself has said, I will never desert you, or will I ever forsake you. So that we confidently say, the Lord is our helper, and I will not be afraid. What will man do to me? Remember those who led you, who spoke the word of God to you, considering the results of their conduct and imitating their faith. Jesus Christ is the same, yesterday and today and forever. Do not be carried away by varied and strange teaching, For it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by food, through which those who were so occupied were not benefited. So what I wanted to focus on here is I wanted to focus on verse 8. Tammy, you want to throw it up for me? Right? I wanted to focus on verse 8, where it says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Yesterday, today, and forever. Which, in case you didn't know, that's like all time, right? Because in theory, everything that happened past is like yesterday. Everything that's happening now is today. And everything that's going to happen in the future is tomorrow, right? So it's kind of, Christ is the same forever and ever and ever. However, as I began to study, this led me with 3 points. And the first point that I wanted to talk about is, what does it mean that Jesus is the same? What does it mean that Jesus is the same? Because there's a lot of different meanings to that. Like, is he the same emotionally? Is he the same here? I'll use an example. There's 3 of us that work here full time. Me, Frank, and Jacob. And me and Jacob are rather different. And what I mean by that is, Jacob's really calm. Right? Like, Jacob's really calm. I'm not really calm. All right? I'm up and down and left and right. I am all over the place. So frequently, what happens when we have a ton of stuff to do is I will walk over into Jacob's office, and Jacob, working, is like a statue, just working away. And I sit down and I'm like, dude, we have to do this and this and this and this. What order are we going to do it in? How are we going to do it? Hey, man. And Jacob, like never breaking focus of what he's doing, is processing all of this information super calmly, right? Like super calmly. Like other than Jacob's wedding, and I spend a lot of time with Jacob, I have never seen him cry. And when I mean I spend a lot of time with Jacob, I probably see Jacob more than his wife sees Jacob, right? So, Jacob is like totally even keel. And in that sense, Jacob is always the same, whereas I am always up or down. Like I walk into a room and people can tell what mood I'm in, right? Not by my facial expressions, just by the way I walk. Like, he's angry, right? I'm there, right? Well, see, so what does it mean when it says Jesus is the same? Because I don't believe it means that he's the same emotionally, and the reason I don't believe that is also because in the book of Hebrews, it calls, Jesus is called a sympathizing high priest. And in order to sympathize with somebody, there has to be some level of emotional connection, right? And if Jesus has some level of an emotional connection with me, then Jesus is mourning with me and excited with me and grieving with me and joyful with me because the Lord knows I'm going through all of those emotions in a single day. So question 1 is, what does it mean for Jesus to be the same? Question 2 is, why are there time periods? Why didn't the author just say, Jesus is the same forever? Why does he add in time periods? And the last thing, because what I don't want to do is I don't just want to grab a verse and pull it out and then teach you about the verse and then not for any reason tell you why the author put the verse there, right? Because I can do that, but if I'm going to teach you a verse without context, if I'm going to teach you a verse without what the author meant to say, then how do you know what I'm teaching you is actually correct, right? So if I do that, I got to teach you it all. So, sit down, buckle in, let's get started. All right, so what does the word same mean? Same in Greek is the word autos, right? Meaning same or immutable, right? Not able to change. Now, what I want you to understand is in the New Testament, this word is only used twice when it refers to God's character, God's nature, right? It's used once in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 8, and then it's also used in Hebrews chapter 1, verse 12. So I believe in order to understand what this word same means, as it refers to God, I have to study what it said. So, in Hebrews chapter 1, and I'm starting a little bit before it just because this first part's really cool. In Hebrews chapter 1, verse 8 through 12, this is how it starts. But of the Son, he said, stop. Focus on what just happened. But of the Son, being Christ, he said. That's God said. Right? So God here is speaking about who? Jesus. I want you to understand that God is speaking about Jesus. God is not speaking about himself. God is speaking about Jesus. So as God speaks about Jesus, this is what he says. Your throne, O God. Notice what just happened here. God called Jesus God. Right? Like that's important that God just called Jesus God, because we live in a world where a lot of people don't actually think that Jesus is God, right? Like Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses, right? Well, Jesus is the greatest of the angels. Well, okay, but God here just called him God. So are you right or God? Because I'm going to bet on God. Just saying, right? So, your throne, O God, is forever and ever, and righteousness scepter is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated lawlessness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you with oil and gladness above your companions. And you, Lord, being Jesus, in the beginning laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the works of your hands. They will perish, but you will remain. They will become like old garments, and like a mantle you will roll them up, and like garments will also be changed. But you are the same, and your years will not come to an end. Right? So what do we know from this passage? Well, the first thing we know from this passage is Jesus, or God himself, calls Jesus God. Right? This is a clear link to Jesus' divinity, right? Jesus is God. And then to further explain that, he says, right, that Jesus Christ was the working agent in all of creation, right? He is the process in which creation was taking place. What do I mean by that? You, Lord, in the beginning, laid the foundations of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. What God is saying is, Jesus, you are the one who laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are a work of your hands. Meaning, Christ was there in the creation process, actively doing the creation. Right? He's there. Meaning he's God. Right? Next, he will change creation, and yet he will remain and be the same. So when I first went to school, I went to school to be an engineer because I was good at math, and I was good at science, and to some degree, I enjoyed them. I was good at them, right? Like my first college math class that I took in college was calculus. I went to that class 4 times all semester and made an A. Why? Because for some strange reason, the Lord decided to bless my brain with the ability to do math. Well, the Lord also decided to bless my brain with the ability to hate math with a passion. Therefore, I decided I didn't want to do this anymore. It was awful. Right? Like I did not go to class because I hated it so much. I sat through my first class and I said, I'm a better teacher than that math guy. Give me my book. And I walked out of class. And I went to class 3 more times. Test 1, test 2, my final. Right? The Lord blessed me with the ability to understand math, but I hated math. But you know what I liked about it? Everything made sense. With a math problem, I can work out a solution. Right? It made logical sense. Same thing with science, right? Science is governed by the laws of physics, right? We got laws of gravity, we got laws of motion, right? We have all these things. These are all things built into creation. Well, guess what this text just said? That at the end of it, God's going to take this, all of the laws of science and all of it, and like an old t-shirt, roll it up and discard it wherever God discards old universes, right? Like, I don't know where that is, but I'm just saying that's what he's going to do because that's what it says he's going to do, right? And when he does that, when he takes everything we know, everything that we can prove, and rolls it up and chunks it, he's still going to be the same. He was before everything, and in everything, and after everything. You understand that? That Jesus Christ's sameness is firmly rooted in his deity. He is God, therefore he is the same. He is God, therefore he is the same. His sameness is the sameness of God. His unchangeableness is the unchangeableness of God. There is no difference. We would refer to this sort of concept as the doctrine of God's immutability, right? His inability to be different, his inability to change, that he is consistently him. And so I'm going to read a couple of passages, and then I'm going to point out an interesting point, and then we're going to go from there. So in Malachi chapter 3, verse 6, God is speaking to the nation of Israel, and this is what he says. For I, the Lord, do not change. Therefore, you, sons of Jacob, are not consumed. Right? I do not change, therefore you are not consumed. In 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 29, he continues a similar thought, right? Also, the God of Israel will not lie or change his mind, for he is not a man that he should change his mind. Now, if you studied the Bible, you'll know some things about this passage real quickly, right? And a really easy question is, hey, Joseph, aren't there verses in the Bible where it actually said God changes his mind? Well, yes, there are. Well, I thought it just said God doesn't change his mind. Well, we're going to get there, right? And here's why. What I want to do is I want to bring up two passages of Scripture that both talk about, well, God changing his mind. However, both of these passages of Scripture are in the exact same place where it said God doesn't change his mind. So what is this, right? In 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 11, it says, slide change, I regret that I made Saul king, for he has turned his back from following me and has not carried out my commands. I regret. Some Bibles say, I changed my mind. I repent. Next. Same one, right? Just like what? 24 verses later? Samuel did not see Saul again until the day of his death. For Samuel grieved over Saul, and the Lord regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel. So I want to sit here and I want to talk about this real quick because I just made a statement that God doesn't change. Right? That's what the author in 1 Samuel chapter 15 just made a statement. He made a statement in 29 that said God doesn't change. Well, in 11, he said that God regretted a decision he made, meaning he changed his mind. And in 35, said, well, God regretted that decision he made. So unless the author, at the same time that he wrote it, right, lost his mind between 11 and 35, or there's something more that's happening here. And what I don't want you to do is read the Bible and say, okay, well, the Lord regrets here. Wait, but the Lord doesn't change his mind there? But the Lord changes. What is happening here? right? I don't want that to be the case. And the reason I don't want that to be the case is because if I ever listen to you speak to people for any period of time, I bet you I can find a contradiction because I didn't listen to the whole story, right? Like, has that ever happened to you? Where somebody hears like a piece of what you're saying and then pieces it together with something else you've said, and then they're like, hey, this contradicts, but they didn't actually get everything you said, right? Okay, so now let's talk about everything that he said, okay? Because I think it's important that we talk about this because the author writes in a phrase here, for he is not a man that he should change his mind. That he is not a man that he should change his mind. When men, when I, when you, when any of us change our mind, we have limitations upon our mind change, correct? The biggest limitation is our ignorance, right? I don't know what's going to happen. Don't care what you think. You don't know what's going to happen. So this morning, I'm driving to work, right? And I pull out onto West Park, right? And I'm stopped at a red light, and there's this car behind me. Okay? It's a little SUV thing behind me, right? And I'm looking, and we start going from the light, and I'm looking, and I watch their car do that number, and I watch their wheel go over there, right? So I stop, put it in reverse, get out, go check on them, right? And it was a lovely black couple. They were on their way to church, and apparently they just got their tire changed yesterday because they had a flat, and it wasn't tightened all the way, and their wheel fell off, right? Well, guess what? When they woke up in the morning, they thought, we got to get ready, we got to go to church. I guarantee you there was not a thought in the back of their mind that had them stranded at West Park with their tire in a ditch. Right? That wasn't there. Right? They didn't know that that was a possible outcome. Right? See, when men changes their mind, we change our mind based upon the limitations of our knowledge. God has no such limitations. The difference here is that God does not have the limitations of humanity. Therefore, in every situation, God holds the full weight of knowledge, both past, present, and future. Meaning, when he made Saul king, he knew that Saul would turn his back on him. He understood that this is what was going to happen. He understood it. So why did he do it? Why did he do it? Because his people asked him to. Because people asked him to. And he even told them. Right? He's like, right? They're like, God, we need a king. He's like, you guys don't want a king. They're not good. He's like, God, you don't understand. We need a king. They got a king, and they got a king, and they got a king. God, I need a king. God's like, hey, you don't need a king. And they're like, God, everyone else has got a king. I need a king. Fine, I'm going to give you a king. You're not going to like it, but I'm going to give you a king. And then at the end of it, you know what he says? God, I told you I shouldn't have given you a king. Right? See, when he makes a decision, it's not the fact that he doesn't change his mind. It's the fact that when he makes a decision, he doesn't have the limitations of man when he does it. Right? So what does this show me? Well, it doesn't show me that God changes his mind and is just everywhere. No, it shows me, A, that first he's truly responsive. Right? His people wanted something, and he said, I don't really know if that's a great idea. And they continued to plead for it, and he said, all right, I'm going to give it. He was responsive to his people. And then the next thing it shows me is he doesn't have the limitations of a man. He knew from the moment that he put Saul in place that that was going to be the case. And so I guess the best analogy I can do about this would be like the Pacific Ocean, right? Right, so let's just say we all get on a boat in the Pacific Ocean and we're just driving around, right? We can go to a spot of the ocean that's like perfect. Super calm, super clear, light breeze, nice. Then we can get in the boat and be on the same ocean and go to another place and think we're about to die. right? There's like 30-foot waves. We're freaking out. Everyone's praying, right? Jesus, take the wheel, right? We're going because we're freaking out at this point because we're about to die. It's the same ocean, right? See, God at the same time can be joyful with one group of people worshiping the Lord, right? And then chastising another group of people for not worshiping him, right? He can do that exact same thing with me right now. He can be like, Joseph, I love the fact that you're doing what I told you to do. I don't love the fact that you did this, right? That doesn't make his character invalid. If anything, it shows that he's the same. You want to know why? Because see, if I'm on this ocean in a boat, the only thing I'm witnessing around me is the ocean, right? So if it's all calm, it looks all calm. If it's all stormy, it looks all stormy. And I can't see the calmness. However, if I get in a rocket ship, right, and I go up into orbit, and I'm looking at the earth, well, then I can see everything. I can see a little storm here. I can see calmness here. I can see it here, right? See, that's exactly how God is. He's not limited by now. He's the same. And because he's the same, right, there's confidence that we have in it, right? See, Jesus is the same in his kind of foreknowledge, in his perfect plan, and in his execution of that plan. There's never a time when he's doing something that's not in his character, right? And more importantly than that, there's never a time that God is changing his mind due to unforeseen circumstances, right? There's never a time that you're going to have a bill that comes up in your life and you're going to say, God, why did this bill come up? And God's going to say, you know what? Didn't see that coming. Never going to happen. If that's the case, he's not God. Right? There's never going to come a time in your life where you're going to face a trial, where you're going to face a sickness, that you're going to face something that God did not see happening. If that's the case, then he's not God. Like, listen to me. If he doesn't know, then he's not God because he's not all-knowing, okay? And he's kind of riding along on the seat of his pants too. No, he has it. His plan has always been the same, even if he's changing his mind. Because he knows exactly what's going to happen. So see, I have that he's the same in all of that. And when I pair that with his perfect love and his perfect wisdom and his perfect power, then I understand that in all of the details of my life, he is bringing about his glorious goal for me. Right? He is the same. And in him being the same, I take comfort in that. I take comfort in the fact that before creation was creation, he was there. And after creation ceases to be creation, he is there. Right? And that through all of it, he's seeing everything. He's not me. He's not you. He's not a man. He's not surprised. He's not shocked. He's not seeing things and saying, man, I didn't see that happening. He's seeing it with perfect knowledge and saying, it's okay, my child. I've already got a plan for this. Right? He created man with a plan for Christ. It was there. So, why the time frame? Why is it important that he's the same yesterday and today and tomorrow? Well, I'm going to try to keep this as short as I can. Yesterday is important because that's actually when Christ showed up. Right? That's when he decided to become flesh and become the divine revelation known to man. That's yesterday. That's the God of the Bible. That's his divine revelation. Right? If I'm experiencing Jesus Christ today, and he's different than the God of the Bible, then what I'm experiencing today is not God. There can be no new divine revelation. Why? Because Jesus is the divine revelation. He is the perfect representation of God the Father. There's no other way to get to God the Father except for Jesus Christ. And the only way that I can see and experience Jesus Christ and who he actually was looking at him yesterday. So yesterday is important because without yesterday, I wouldn't know who he is. Today is important because today is actually where I experience him. See, if I have yesterday and I don't have today, and I don't have relationship, then what I have is historical knowledge, not life-changing relationship. See, today is where we really experience a relationship with Christ because what we found to be true about yesterday. If I have today without yesterday, then I don't have him because he's not the same. If I have yesterday without today, then all I have is knowledge. I want to be as clear as I possibly can in the new year. There is one way to heaven, and that is through a relationship with Jesus Christ today. My aunt passed away this week. I'm going to go to a funeral on Saturday. I don't particularly know how I'm going to handle that funeral. And the reason I don't particularly know how I'm going to handle that funeral is I don't particularly know the status of my aunt's faith. There are two types of people in this world. Those who have relationship and those who don't. That's it. Those who experience Christ today and are experiencing him today, and those who don't. My prayer is that when we leave here for the new year, every person here is experiencing Christ today. That's my prayer. Because I can tell you he's the same yesterday, and you can look at him yesterday and say, you know what, I see how he's the same. But if I don't have a relationship with him today, then that doesn't mean anything. So see, he has to be the same yesterday. He's the same today. And why is tomorrow important? Because tomorrow is the whole hope of our future. Right? And I can logically deduce that if he was the same thousands of years ago and he's the same today, then in thousands of years he's going to be the same. Right? See, tomorrow is where all of our hope rests. But it's not just, hanging upon what he's going to give us. It's ultimately him. See, when people think of heaven, a lot of times we think about the things that we're going to get, right? Like, I'm going to get a new body, right? I'm not going to be sick anymore. I ain't got to pay bills anymore, right? Amen. I ain't got to worry about money no more, right? These are all things like I don't have to deal with anymore. But oftentimes I think we think about what we're going to get more than what we think about what we have. The ultimate prize of heaven isn't a fancy mansion with gold roads, right? It's Jesus. It is the creator of the universe, the same being at the beginning of time and right now in the end of time, desiring a relationship with us. That's the treasure. So how does this passage relate to us today? I'm going to read it one more time. And the reason I'm doing this, and I probably could stop here, but I don't want to, is because I believe that when the author was writing this, he was writing this for a time just like this. Because you're going to find that he talks about two issues today, which I think are the greatest threat to you and to our church in 2019. in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5. It says, make sure that your character is free from the love of money, being content with what you have. For he himself has said, I will never desert you, nor will I ever forsake you. So that we confidently say, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What will man do to me? Remember those who led and who spoke the word of God to you, and consider the result of their conduct and imitate their faith. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Do not be carried away by varied or strange teachings, for it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by foods, through which those who were so occupied were not benefited. So what is the first thing he says? Do not love money. Be free of the love of money or greed. Be free from it. Why? Because this ends up leading you to destruction. And we'll talk about at the end why it leads us to destruction. The next thing he says is be content. Be content because he, the same God that created the universe, is with you. Be content. And upon that contentment, recognize that the Lord is my helper. Man, this is the greatest confidence builder for people. Right here. Like, this is the greatest confidence builder because the person who outlined the foundation of the world just said, I'm never going to leave you. I'm never going to forsake you. I'm here. And by the way, I'm actually responsive to what you say. I'm not some mean God sitting up there with the magnifying glass and you guys are a bunch of ants, right? No, I'm here and I care and I sympathize and I want to help you. Man, that is awesome. You're going to tell me that the creator of the universe loves me enough to actually help me? All right, sign me up, right? Like, that's what an all-knowing, an all-powerful, and an all-loving God is with me. Then I don't have any other confidence for this year, right? Like, this is my confidence. So my choice is to be free this year because of him. And yes, I will deal with trials this year. You will deal with trials this year. Right? Some of us in this room are going to get sick. Some of us in this room might lose our job. Some of us in this room might have an unforeseen bill. Some of us in this room might lose a loved one. But how does any of that compare to the power of God? There's no comparison. So why would I be afraid? Why would I be afraid? And then he gives his final warning. His first warning is reject the love of money, and his second warning is reject false doctrine. It literally says, don't be blown around by varied and strange teachings. Have you guys ever been driving in a car and like the wind's blowing really hard and it's like pushing the car all around? Yeah, it's not very fun. That's what he's saying. Don't be blown around. Be rooted in the sameness of God. And the reason why I think that this is a problem is because in 2 Timothy chapter 4, this is what it says, and this is the time I believe we're in now. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but wanting to have their ears tickled, they will accumulate for themselves teachers in accordance to their own desires, and will turn aside, and will turn their ears from the truth, and will turn aside the myths. That is exactly where we are now. It's exactly where we are now. And so the new year's here. And so I want to sum up these two warnings that he said. He said, be careful of the love of money, reject the love of money, and reject false teaching. So what do I think? I think that the love of money, consumerism, right? Materialism, a whole bunch of isms, right? I believe that is one of the greatest dangers to our Christianity in 2019. You want any example of that? Just look at Christmas. Man, just look at Christmas. Christmas is literally built upon, I need more. I need more gifts. I need a new car. I need more. Right? And then false doctrine. Well, Lord, I need new more. You're going to provide for me now? Wait, you mean if I just change the Bible a little bit here, I can get everything I want? Sign me up. See, these are the two greatest threats to us and our church. And the reason that they are is because both of them cause us to take our eyes off of Christ. See, there's glory and perfection in the sameness of God, that he is the same, that he was the same before creation and after creation, that he is unchangeable. That throughout all of time, he's been working together to have this master plan. And what men have done is said, you know what, God, I see your plan, I like your plan, I'm going to like this a whole lot more. And instead of enjoying the beauty that comes with God's perfect plan, even if the beauty is found in pain, we've rejected it for a momentary pleasure. I once heard a pastor say, it's like eating mud pies on the floor because you don't know what's on the table. Right? The king's got steak on the table, but because you can't even imagine it, you're going to settle for the scraps on the floor. Lord knows in 2019, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be new. But I serve a God that was the same forever and ever. So my final word, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. He is the same truth that he has always been, in the same treasure that all men desire. Receive him and be free.